everyone, to another episode of the Urban Indigo podcast. I'm your host, Diana Min, and I'm joined by my very good friend, Gabriel De La Puente. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me over.
Yeah. I love having you over. It's always a blast. And, me and Gabriel were thinking about doing this for a while. So I'm so glad that we finally got to get together and really come together and have a really important conversation. So, as you guys know, I'm Diana Min, the Urban Indigo. I'm an empowerment coach and spiritual mentor. And Gabriel here is a motivator and a self development junkie. And it is so nice to have like these deep, really introspective conversations with you about things that we're going through as human beings and relationships. And Gabriel actually recommended this book to me, which has been wildly popular in the self-development world, and it's called Attached. Do you remember who the authors are?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but we can always put it on the notes.
Yeah.
Highly, highly recommended. It's a life changer.
Yeah, honestly, it was such a moment for me to realize how I have been anxiously attached my whole life. And so, if you guys have read the book Attached, then you know. And if you haven't read the book, so we're going to actually be talking a lot about the book in this episode. But there are three different types of attachment styles, right? So, we have the anxious attachment, and we have the avoidant attachment, and we have the secure attachment.
Secure, yes.
Yeah. So, which attachment style are you, Gabriel?
So I'm definitely the anxious attachment style. That's why whenever you were telling me your story, I was like, hey, you should really read this book. This book was like a life changer for me since I read it.
Yeah, I am definitely, I would say I'm anxiously attached mostly. And then there are certain scenarios where I may be avoidant.
Okay.
And I love how in the book it actually talks about like when you are with somebody, it'll actually make you more of the other thing.
Right.
Right. So like if you are, if somebody is a secure attached person and you're anxious, then I can actually be more secure, which I've definitely experienced in my relationships before as well.
Right. So usually basically according to the theory, so what happens is if you're anxious and you're with a secure person, you become more secure. And typically that's what we're supposed to do. As anxious people, we're supposed to go ahead and try to find somebody that's secure, that basically they will just ground you.
Yo, secure attachment people, hit me
Where
up.
are you? We're looking for you.
Yes, like there should be a Facebook group of just secure attachment people, or like a dating app that actually, oh my God, imagine there was a dating app.
Let's do that. That would be one of the quizzes that we do.
Right, it's like swipe left on all the avoidant and anxious attachment people, please. Like, please put me in the pool with more secure attachment people because I can't do it anymore. I can't.
Same, you and I both.
I honestly, well, I think most people know. I just got out of a really, really toxic and volatile relationship this past summer. And, I think in our friendship growing and you being such a beautiful support to me because of things that you've experienced in your relationships and really giving me insights into things that I can work on for myself so that I'm no longer attracting these types of relationships to myself. Because at the end of the day, and if you're in the healing or self-development world, you understand like you attract what you are.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
You attract what you are. Everybody is a mirror to you. Every relationship, every situation is a reflection of your own inner working, of your own inner thoughts, of your subconscious and your own inner beliefs. And so when I really left this relationship finally and was able to really get back to myself, I think as a fellow self-development junkie, I was like, all right, how do I fix this?
And especially, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again, right?
Yes.
So how do we grow? How do we evolve? Because these experiences, we're always learning something.
Yeah.
So this person gifted you something, right? That's not the kind of gift that we want for the future, FYI. But
can I return the gift? Is there a gift receipt?
There's no Nordstrom, sorry.
I don't want store credit. I hate this store.
Yeah, we're gonna graduate to another one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of like how it happens. So like we learn from those experiences, right, and we like move on, so that hopefully we don't do that again.
Yeah.
And then we learn to identify also like those red flags when we start dating again, to see like, okay, like this is starting to look very familiar to what I already experienced before. Like what can we do so that way we don't fall in the same pattern?
Yes, yes, that is the goal. So is that how you kind of came into finding the book Attached? Like, were you healing from like a
Oh
toxic
yeah,
relationship
yeah. I was
pattern?
actually in the toxic relationship at the moment, and he had it on his shelf. And then I grabbed the book, and then I started reading it, and I was like, wait, like this sounds like my life, like
Yeah.
with him. And I mean, while I was reading the book, we actually broke up, and I kept it. I was like, no, I need this in my life. And I vividly remember just going through the book, and then I was like, wait, like my relationship has been written over here by somebody else
Mm,
that predicted the outcome that was going to happen, right? So
yeah.
that's why for me, like that's truly what I remember. Like one of the exercises that you had to do, I was sitting in a coffee shop and I started crying because I started seeing like all the similarities. It's
Mm,
almost like somebody like wrote my story and like published that.
yeah.
And it is pretty common for a lot of the people that actually read it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that Lauryn Hill song. It's like strumming my pain with your fingers.
Yeah. Literally.
You're reading your whole life. You're like, how do you know me like that? Wow. So it's interesting. So your ex, who you feel was toxic, actually had the book. Did he ever even read it?
He said he did, but I don't. Honestly, I do not think he read it at all because I did ask him a couple of questions. I was like, "Oh, so like, so when you do this and when I do this, this is what we're doing." And like, he just gave me like a blank look, like he had no idea what I
So
was
he
talking
didn't read
about.
it.
Oh no, yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I really want to, you
He was
know,
just to give you a picture. He was one of those people that every time that I would post like an inspirational something, he would literally go to like the secret app, take a screenshot, and then put it on his story. So actually, I don't think he read the book. Looking back.
a secret app.
Yeah, so like The Secret, the book. So they have an
Oh,
app that it gives you like daily inspirational
oh, okay, okay, I got it.
like
Yeah, yeah.
manifestations. So he will take a screenshot and then he'll put it on his Instagram story
Oh,
to
okay.
appear like he was
To
woke.
appear as
Yeah.
if he was inspirational.
Yeah, and every time I will see that, I was like, wow, this guy is so deep.
Oh my God. What do they call the mirroring? They
Yeah.
call that the mirroring.
Hmm.
We'll talk about narcissists in a little bit. Well, I
Yeah.
honestly like I really feel like my relationship, the relationship I just got out of was with a covert narcissist. And so I definitely, if we're going to talk about gifts that we get from toxic relationships, I learned a lot about narcissists. I learned a lot about red flags. I learned a lot about my lack of boundaries. I learned a lot about my anxious attachment style. And so, if those are the gifts that I was meant to have, then thank you, universe. If I had to go through it like that, I'll take it.
To share it with other people so that way
To
other
be here,
people,
yes,
yeah.
to share with you guys now, but one of the red flags is the mirroring, right? Like
Yeah.
when you meet somebody and you're like, hey, like I love self-development, they're like, so do I, and you're like,
Yeah.
and so for example, like I went on a first date with my ex, it was like a year ago, and I guess he kind of picked up on the fact that like I love self-development, or I was into people that also like self-development, and he was like, yeah, like I've had a therapist for 6 years, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like a man with a therapist, like you're doing the inner work. Wow. Like I was so like, and like,
Like a
got,
soda light.
right. Like I was
Yeah.
like glitter started to fall from the sky. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Come to find out, he hadn't seen his therapist in almost 2.5 years. So I had been bamboozled basically. And I
But
was,
he's had a therapist for 6 years, right? Even though
yeah.
he hasn't seen one for 2.5.
Yeah, so
Hello.
technically you didn't really
No, he
have
had a
it, but it was
therapist.
just like, and that's the mirroring, right? So like, just like if we can give you anything, watch out for the mirroring when you're first meeting someone. You want to make sure, are they really into the things that they say they're into, or are they just showing you this part of themselves that they want you to see and be portrayed as so that you will like them, accept them,
Right.
right?
Basically, if they're acting like a little chameleon, right? If they're like changing according to their setting to be like more likable at that point.
Yeah.
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 It's a thing.
It's scary.
But there are tools to identify that early on, though. So that's a good
I have
news.
PTSD, so I'm scared. That was honestly, I'm still like recovering from like post traumatic stress disorder from this relationship, to be honest. But I think that through a lot of the tools that, we've talked about, especially this book, like really understanding like what red flags are, you know what
Right.
I mean? And I think so what happens is like because of my childhood trauma, because of my fear of abandonment, I have developed an anxious attachment style. And so what I love about this book is that it actually gives you like tools and practices and, you know, things to do to kind of counteract your normal behavior, right? So because anxiously attached, we're like this fear of like losing somebody, right? This fear of abandonment. So we're like, and so I learned a lot in the book about the attachment system in our brain and how we have this like part of our nervous system that is just chemically induced to want to be attached to another person because of the caveman brain that, like more likely you'll survive if you're with
Somebody
another
else, right?
person,
In
right?
groups, absolutely.
And so, because I have an anxious attachment style, my attachment system is activated when I feel like I'm going to be abandoned or somebody is going to leave me or I'm going to be left alone. So, it actually craves and like seeks and grasps at more attachment.
Right.
And that was
And sometimes we confuse that with love, right? So sometimes like that
yes.
feeling that you feel like, oh, I went on a date with this person. Oh, he's great. He like threw some crumbs of attention your way, and you're like, oh, I love this person. But sometimes we don't even want that person. It's just like what we're conditioned, that feeling, that moment, that euphoria that's felt at the moment, that
Yes.
is confused with love, perhaps because we haven't like fully experienced what true love is all about, right?
Mm,
So when we're coming from that space, it's almost like lacking, trying to grab on to those people, perhaps because we were abandoned or we didn't have like all the, love and care and nourishment that we needed when we were young. We're just
yeah.
like trying to grab it wherever we can. And, it shows up very differently for a lot of us, but it has the same, almost like similarities in a way.
Right, right. I think, our upbringing has so much to do with how we learn what love is, like you
Right.
said. And, like, I think so much of my childhood was so much abuse and so much suffering. So it's like my bar of what love is like kind of low. And it's interesting because, I'm a coach, I'm a spiritual mentor. Like I've done so much work for a decade, but I think like because I've worked on so many other aspects of my self-development, relationships was like my last terrain of like where things still needed to be looked at. And
Right.
I definitely was given that opportunity to look at that in this past relationship. So um yeah, I think
And
the
we're always a work in progress. So
yeah,
no matter how many times, how many years you have been working on yourself,
that's true.
like you're always learning new things. There's
That's true.
always something to be improved, to like recreate, to like make better.
Absolutely.
And I think, yeah, I'm like, look at you now. You're just like, I mean, even 10 times more powerful than
Oh,
before.
I love you. That's why he's on this podcast, guys. So where I saw, because like as I was listening to this book, right? I had it on Audible. I just watched this like backwards like journey of my relationship and was like, oh my God, all the ways in which I could have, should have, could have, would have. But we're here to really give you my mistakes and our lessons and
Mine
all
too,
the
as
things we've
well.
learned so
Yeah.
that you can avoid these for yourself, right? So what I've realized, and me and my girlfriends have talked about this because I have a girlfriend who every single person she's ever been in a relationship with has proposed to her. Now, ladies, this is a life hack here. And
Listen.
and the reason she tells me, and she's much older, the reason they've all proposed to her, and she's all been like, meh, whatever. She's just like such a queen. She's like not settling for anything less. But the reason she says they all proposed to her is because she doesn't sleep with them for 3 months.
Okay.
She allows herself to be dating someone for 3 months, and if they're willing to wait, that's great. And if they're not, she's like, boop, bye. And I remember when I first met my ex, there wasn't that waiting period. There wasn't that waiting period. And I think that's where, like, that was the fork in the road, right? Because immediately when you are intimate with someone as an anxiously attached person, that's it.
It bonds you.
It bonds you and you're attached now. And so now all of these red flags that are there, very visible, all of these things that maybe I didn't want, like, or would accept normally, I now all of a sudden had to, because now I'm attached and I have to, it was almost like it was like well, I'm attached now, so whatever baggage comes with you, like, I just have to accept. And it was like,
Yeah, and even though you see the red flags, you see these things that you don't like, you're still like almost like bonded to this person and you can't let go. So you just like are in this roller coaster getting banged all over the place, because you can't let go.
yeah,
Right? Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I did at least. Like I saw like the red flags everywhere, but I was like, no, that's just no.
What
We're
were
not
some of
gonna.
the red flags
Yeah.
you saw? Give us
Oh my
one.
gosh, he's like temper, how he treated other people, how he treated like some of the people that worked for him.
Mm.
Even his dog, I was like, oh my gosh, if he's treating this like baby little dog this way, like how is he gonna treat me?
Oh my God. He
But
hurt
I
his
was like, no,
dog.
he wouldn't do that to me. I'm special. Like he loves
Ah,
me, like he's different with me. I'm the one that's gonna change him, and
yeah.
that like because of how much love I give to him and how loyal I am to him, he's gonna be different with me. I'm the exception
I'm the
of the
exception.
rule.
Oh my
Yes,
God,
lesson learned.
yes. Wow. So, what do you think had you attached to him, regardless of seeing all of these red flags?
On a COVID situation.
Oh,
So
COVID.
totally COVID. So we were like, we went on a date. It was the most magical day. Like walk by the beach.
Oh my
He
God.
brought flowers, picked me up in his convertible. We rode. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is my life. And then after that, he shared with me a lot about his trauma and about what he's gone through. But he
Mm.
said that he was working on it. He was going to
They're
counseling.
always working on
He
it.
was going to counseling, and I am a helper, right? And I'm like, at the time, I love projects, and this was definitely like a fixer upper. Really pretty fixer upper, by the way, but a fixer upper regardless. And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And then,
You had your tool belt, you were ready.
oh my gosh, here,
You were
here.
like, I'm gonna fix this. I think
So yeah, that's just
I know. I see myself like this is the mirror that I'm seeing, because
right.
I mean, guys, I'm a life coach. It's literally what I do for a living. So like when a
And
fixer
she's really good at it.
and
Incredible.
I'm really good at it. So I'm like, "Oh, what are your problems? What's your trauma? What are your issues?
Right.
I got this. I no, this will be we got you snip snap in no time." Like I was like, "Oh, this is going to be fine. This is going to be fine."
Turn around. Yeah.
I'm the best person for you to be with, because I'm gonna help you
Mhm.
be the person that come healed. Come healed. That's really like that is my new motto for life. It's like come healed, don't come at all. I can't. I'm really good at helping my clients, but no, in no world do I want to date one of my clients. Do I want to be in a relationship with someone who is almost technically like my client, where
Right.
I'm like being being a mommy. And I heard this the other day, which I thought was really interesting, from Melanie Ann Layer, actually. She said, being a mother is feminine, but mothering is masculine. And it just like, it kind of like gave me like that, like brain explosion, where I'm like, and she's like, when you begin to mother, you will always receive a child. And I was like, oh, that hurts.
Ouch, one of those moments,
Yeah,
right?
one of those moments where you're just like, okay, well, I won't be doing that again. And
Right.
yeah, do you think it's this anxious attached part of ourselves that are like, oh, no matter how,
So also
ridden
what
with red
happens
flags
is
you are, I'll
that
still take it.
so at least for me what happened, right? So I was like, okay, here's a project, like very good looking project, very appealing to the
Yeah,
eye,
yeah.
very like charming, captivating, everything that you really want, but on, at a price. Heavy price. but then you get lost trying to help. At least like what I did, I got lost trying to help him, and it wasn't
Yeah.
anymore about me, about the things that I love, about my self development, about like giving back to like my community, to doing the things that I really like. It became about how can I help Tony today. Like it was all about him, and then I just forgot about myself, really, in the process, and then you know how that goes. That's never a good.
Uh,
That's not good,
yeah. Yeah.
And usually, like if they're avoidant too, so how it works is like if you're attached, you're craving like dates and touch and communication and
Closeness.
closeness,
Yeah.
affirmation. But typically, people that are anxious actually get together with avoidant, which are the opposite. So they are the ones that are not craving that. So
They
the
need
ones that they
space.
need, the closer they get to you, the more space that they need. The more like, oh no no no, no, like I need to do like my own thing. I need to breathe. I don't have room for myself. And then
Right.
that triggers us because we have major abandonment issues,
Right.
and then we crave that person even
The
more. So
attachment system gets triggered and we're like, we need more
right,
attachment. And
and then
the
they are like,
avoidant
no, 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 no. Yeah,
the avoidant attachment style, which this was really interesting for me because I've definitely been with avoidant people before and realized like I would kind of get like super like needy in there. I'm like, I'm not even like that, but it would trigger this
right,
attachment system within me. And their attachment system is like the more that somebody gets close, the more they need space and the more they feel like almost like they're suffocating. Like that,
right.
I
To
heard
protect themselves from getting hurt or from suffering.
it's a
So it's
defense
like
mechanism.
exactly
Right.
100%. So
Yeah.
we want more and we crave more, and then they're like, no, this is getting too close.
Yeah.
I need to breathe, and like literally just pull away.
Right, right. Because their fear is like if people get too close, they're gonna lose themselves or they're gonna lose like who they are, they're gonna lose like their lives and like like I once dated this guy who was very very successful, multimillionaire tech guy, and it's like me being like just like a kind loving person, it was just like it
Too
was
much.
it was too much. I wasn't even doing that, but it would always make me feel like, I'm sorry, am I hindering your life? Like, am I burdening your life? And it would feel like that. It's like,
Right.
well, I have all this stuff that I gotta do and building, and he'd like go off to weddings by himself secretly. He went off to Burning Man in the middle of the night without telling me, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like,
Right.
and now after I read the book, I was like, oh my God, like this person was so avoidant. I was so anxious, and it was like, what do they call it? The anxious avoidant cycle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get into that cycle. So like one person wants more, then the other person wants more space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, I asked this question to you off camera earlier, but I realized like my ex that I just broke up with, the really toxic one, he was anxious as well.
Okay.
And so I was thinking because when I was listening to the book, I'm like, he's definitely not avoidant. He's definitely anxious. Like this man would, if I blocked him, he emailed me. If I blocked him on email, he would show up at my house.
That's
And if
anxious.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if that wasn't a thing, now he's texting my friends and he's trying to be connected to my circles because he's trying to
Right.
attach to like any part of like my life. It got scary, and so I actually realized in that scenario I became avoidant because I was like, no, get away, like get out, blocking you, doing all the things. I was the one like, hey, like it's
Well,
too
because I
much.
feel like after probably you realize how much you have changed, right? You realize that you like lost yourself. You were done at that point,
Yeah.
and that's when you started to be like more avoidant. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you, according to like the theory, right, to the book, it says that if there is like two anxious people, one of them will start like pulling back to kind of
Hmm.
create balance and become a little bit more avoidant as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really do feel like I lost so much of myself. I lost so much, like in like kind of what you were saying, like in the giving, right, and in the trying to caretake, and in the putting that other person's needs before your own, and I really lost sight of like who I was and what I was doing here on earth, and like my purpose and my work, and it really is, when they talk about narcissistic abuse, like it is like someone really sucking your soul. And I felt like an empty shell of myself. Like I felt like I didn't even, like I couldn't really find my light. And it took me so long to
Yeah, because
really,
you have somebody that's just taking your light and
yeah,
taking and taking and taking and taking, and at that point, some point,
yeah.
were you feeling like depleted? I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of like emotional manipulation and like just a lot of emotional manipulation in the sense of like, well, I'm meant to be your husband and you're the mother of my kids and we're meant to be together. And so as soon as I we get through this part of our relationship where I'm being the most destructive tornado in your life, things are about to get better, right? And so part of probably my anxious attachment was like, all right, well, let me hold on just a little bit more. It's going to get better as soon as he just wreaks havoc over everything that I've built, everything that I've worked so hard to create for myself. As it's all falling apart around me, like it's about to get better. And you really get warped into this idea, this illusion of like, oh, like this is the person I'm meant to be with, so I have to tolerate this. I mean, I'm laughing now, but I really like, and we can talk about boundaries because what's so interesting is I started to I started to study under the psychologist, and I took two of her courses. One was about coping styles that are developed in like from the time you're an infant to like a toddler, right? From like the time you're born to 6. So like we're talking about real deep inner child wounds that are so subtle. And then the second course I took was a boundaries course.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how the universe brings you what you need when you need it in divine timing. And as I moved through this course around boundaries, I realized that like I had none. Like, or not only did I had very poor boundaries,
Yeah.
very poor boundaries. And I think that is like one of the best things you can do to empower yourself, whether you're anxious or avoidant or secure or just a human
Human.
being,
Yeah.
is to learn where
Yeah.
your boundaries are.
To learn how to say no and that it comes down like once you start like loving yourself, right? Like really putting yourself first, it's a lot easier to go ahead and create those boundaries and to have those boundaries with the people that you love to.
Right,
Let them know, hey, this is okay. No, this is not okay
right.
with me right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in my most recent ayahuasca ceremony actually. I really saw like all the points in that relationship where I should have left. Where I
Right.
should have been like hard no, like I'm done. Like times where like I was being yelled at in my face, times where I felt very unsafe, times where like his anger was extremely volatile and disrespectful, and where a lot of like my vulnerabilities would be like weaponized against me, and just really traumatic stuff. And I saw it in the ceremony, and it was like, the way ayahuasca works, like she shows you and confronts you with all these parts of yourself for you to see, acknowledge, love, accept, embrace, and purge, and let go of. And it was like this understanding of like, well, if I really did love myself, like I wouldn't have accepted all of this. And so it was a
Mm.
really hard truth for me to swallow. It's like, well,
Mm.
maybe I didn't really love myself, like on a core level, right? Like on a superficial level, yeah, I love myself. I think I'm great. I'm awesome. I do tons of good things in the world. But like on like a deep core cellular level, like I don't think I really did love myself if I allowed myself to be treated like that for so long.
And that's probably one of the things that showed you like going through this like hardship and this like terrible relationship. Like for me personally, after I left the relationship, which sounds a lot like yours, very narcissistic. It was everything about the other person, not me. Like talk about like screaming and intimidation, hardcore.
Yeah.
All the time. But I realized that I was like, wait, like if I would see this happening in one of my friends' lives,
Right.
I will be so against that. I will be like, that is not okay. Like, no, like you have to leave that person. We'll have like a very loving conversation with this person. But I was like, happening in my own life, and I didn't even want to talk about it because there's shame, like
Yeah.
embarrassment. Um,
Yeah.
how many books have I read? I should know better, right? But that's when it comes to like vulnerability, and it was one of the good conversations that I had with a friend
Yeah.
that at a dinner party that we had that he exploded and screamed at me in front of everyone. And then I didn't say anything, and then my friend was like, "Hey, we're actually like really worried." That was like the catalyst for me to start like getting out of there. But yeah, I mean,
Mm,
it's if that love is not like from if you're not loving yourself at that
mm-hmm.
point,
Yeah,
it's easier to let those things happen.
yeah. I mean, it's so nice that you had friends that were able to kind of see you in that relationship and see that you were suffering and that it wasn't healthy. It's interesting, when you get gaslit a lot and you almost like I realized what I was doing at the time was I was actually keeping it very private and
Right,
very secret because I didn't want people A to know, B to judge me, and C to judge him. And then and
right,
judge me for staying with him. You know what I
right,
mean? And so a lot of it was very low key and everything on the surface and on social media was like we were happy and we were together and everybody loved him like and so it was really hard when we broke up and I really needed to like untangle him from my life. There was a lot of people that were still very much wanting to be in connection with him and wanting him to be included in community things where I was just like, no, like I don't feel safe. Like I don't feel okay with this. And like that was really hard for me. Like that
mm,
was like a real like that was probably the most traumatic thing also because it it really was reminiscent of like my childhood. Like a lot of my abuse was in private, right? A lot of my suffering was in silence, and a lot of the things that happened to me, nobody knew about ever until I became an adult and was able to talk out about it. And so, and anytime I did try to, as a child, speak to somebody about it, it was always like, I was never believed. I was never believed. And even to the point where, I've been raped as as a young woman and, you know, propositioned and really I would bring that to be I would never be believed. And so in this scenario where like this man has like emotionally, verbally, psychologically abused me and I was trying to tell people and people were like not it wasn't like we don't believe you, Diana, but it was more of like it was just the energy of oh, he's just so nice.
right. Disbelief, really.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it
Or
was
like shock, or
yeah, it
like
was more like it
that
was
they
more
couldn't put the story
they couldn't
together
put
with
it
the
together.
person,
They
because
couldn't put
like
it
on the
together.
outside it was just like so pretty and
Well,
so
you guys look
pleasant.
like you guys were so happy, and I'm sure it wasn't just him. Like, it was like the
Yeah,
energy of like, oh, well, did you contribute to that? All this stuff. And so it really triggered this like, wow, like no one is protecting me, no one is keeping me safe, like no one has my back.
which is
And
basically the same thing that
it
happened
was
to
the
you in
same
your
thing that
childhood.
happened in
Yeah.
my childhood exactly. No one protected me. And that I think is
Oh,
like
I'm sorry.
thank you, babe. I think that was the biggest like catalyst of like the healing that like needed to take place there because when I went into that ayahuasca ceremony, it was like a month after we broke up. So it was like in August, and what I saw was like myself. I was like 7 or 8 years old, like my inner child. She had no shirt on. She was just in her underwear. She was dirty. Her hair was like disheveled. She looked like a cave girl. And she had, she was running around in this maze of dark closets, like terrified, like completely terrified. And it really showed me that, like, my inner child, like my inner child, deep deep at my core, is still so fucking scared, so scared. And I felt so deeply unsafe in that relationship, but what it pulled up for me was the deep roots of my unsafety, and for me to see like where that comes from and where the anxious attachment comes from is like I'm so scared, right, to
Yeah.
be left, to be abandoned, to be abused, to be hurt. And so, you know, so much of the healing has to do with like what happened to us as children, and so much of what we experience as adults as a result of what is your inner child still experiencing? Like, she was stuck in that trauma. She was
Right.
still stuck in that trauma. And, so much of the work in the quantum healing space is really about like going to be that person that you needed as a child that you didn't have, right? And so a lot of that ceremony was me like basically like taking her and being like, and and I think the biggest wound for children of abuse or anybody that suffered any trauma in general is we really want for someone to acknowledge like just how bad it was. Like, we don't need you to make it better and we don't need you to make it go away. We just want to be seen in our suffering. And I think that was like the biggest thing, was that like nobody was seeing me in my suffering. Nobody was seeing me in how bad it was. And I had to do it, right? I had to go in and be like, that was bad. Yeah, that was so bad. And I'm so sorry you went through that. Like, and you didn't deserve that. And just the acknowledgement of that was like the healing.
I'm so sorry that happened to you, sweetheart.
It's
But
okay.
like,
It's okay.
kind of what we always say, like, everything that happens to us is like for our benefit, right?
Yes.
If you wouldn't have gone through all of this, I have to say a nice word, all of this hardship, right? You wouldn't be where you are today. You wouldn't have been able to
Yes.
heal that, right? You wouldn't have been
Yes.
able to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that because, like, in my suffering, like I said, it looked a little different than yours, but it was the same. Like,
Yeah.
I told you about the nightmare that I had when, like everyone is like bullying me and screaming and everyone's watching and nobody's doing anything, right?
Mhm.
People just look the other way because it
Yeah.
wasn't their situation. But
Yeah.
because of that, right, like now as adults, we, first of all, like we're healing that. That was brought up to life at the right time for you to like heal that
Mhm.
and even grow. Because like I see you growing right now at so many levels
Thank
because,
you.
that was something that needed to be healed inside of you.
Right.
But yeah, yeah. And thank you for sharing your story though and for being so vulnerable and for like having like all of us like feel and experience kind of what you felt
Yeah.
to like heal ourselves and also like to be able to see people that are in that position as well.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes like when you hear that something like that happened to somebody that you love so much, first of all, like how do you respond to them? Like how are you like a good friend, a good partner, a good human, right?
Yeah.
And second, what can you do to prevent that from happening in other people? Because it's currently happening right now as well, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because what I really understood from the entire experience, the toxic relationship, the breaking up of that relationship, and you know the eventual healing through sacred plant medicine and all the work that I've been doing,
Right.
is that I have never felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
I have never felt safe. And so there is a part of me that looks at that relationship, although I was deeply emotionally unsafe, psychologically unsafe, like I attracted a person that would continue to make to reiterate that unsafety, right?
Yeah,
And
because that was your home base as a
that,
child, right? So
yes, it's what you're used
that's what
to.
it felt like home for you. That was
Right.
what you were used to at the time, and
Absolutely.
that's because that's the shit that you had to deal with when you were little. So that's the
Absolutely.
only thing where you felt home.
Yeah.
And that's kind
Yeah.
of why we gravitate towards just like terrible relationships because literally when I went back with Tony, like what we said to each other is like you feel like home.
Even
Like
though even though it was
even though it was
abusive,
bad, it was toxic, it was crazy, and he did feel like home.
felt
Like
comfortable.
the ups and downs and the craziness and the chaos, like that felt very like comfortable. You know,
Yes. Ugh.
you
It's
know,
so crazy how like our nervous system actually gets addicted to that emotional roller coaster, and it's like
right?
what is the stress hormone? I forget. It's not oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone. It's I forget. We'll look it up another
We'll
time.
put like the caption on it. We'll put the name under the caption.
But yeah, like
Yeah,
our body gets addicted to stress hormones. And so, especially when you're in a toxic cycle like that, it's just like you realize that you're just like you said, it's a roller coaster. And so what's so interesting is,
and that's what we confuse with love. I feel like
yes.
that's why this book like changed my life. I think that's why it's changing yours because all of that toxicity, the ups and downs,
Yeah.
then we don't have any other thing to base it out of, right? We don't have any other base point. So we think, oh, like when I feel this is love, but that is not love.
Yes. Yeah. I think.
You know?
Yeah. I
Like this
know. I'm
thing
like,
is
oh
love.
yes,
Like,
yes.
but I mean, we only do what we can with the information that we have at the time, right?
Right.
So at that time, we got into those relationships, into those situations because that's what we knew. But
Mm.
like now we know better, and that's why we wanted to share this with more people, so that hopefully more people also know. First of all, if you're in a relationship like that, that is not normal. You deserve so much better. And second, like if you have had a habit, because that's what I noticed in me. I was like, wait, like this is happening right now, but this has happened like 5 times before too, you know? So I'm like, what's the common denominator? I am.
Yeah.
So that's when I was
It's
like, okay, we
me.
need to like start. I needed to personally start like learning and healing and
Yeah.
just really looking within, you know?
Absolutely. You know, I think, and anybody that's, on a self development or healing journey, like, I think there are catalysts in our
Right.
lives that really drive us deeper into our work and into introspectively looking at ourselves. Because if you're constantly blaming other people and it's like, it's this person, it's that person, is this person, that, but then you never get to the root of like, well, how and why did I attract this person to my life? Because it's all energy, right? Like energy attracts like
Yeah.
energy, and we're always attracting to us the people that are going to trigger the wounds that need to be healed. And when I got into that boundaries course and I really understood what it was to have boundaries, right? And the thing is with boundaries, like they're not defenses. And what I realized the difference between a boundary and a defense comes from self protection and unsafety. And a boundary comes from self love and self respect. And I really went on this journey of really understanding like what a boundary is, because I think I was really confused with the term and the concept. I'm thinking a boundary is just like, oh, fuck you. Like, I don't care about you. Get out of my life. And that's
Right.
actually not what it is. A boundary is like these are the things that I will tolerate because I love myself. And these are the things I won't tolerate because I love myself. And you can choose to adhere to this or not. And if you choose not to, then unfortunately, we can no longer be in connection.
Right. And also, like, so first of all, through boundaries, you're honoring yourself. You're really
Yes,
honoring yourself and your wishes. Second, you're training other people how to treat you.
absolutely.
Because we're constantly training, people how they're going to talk to us, how they're going to treat us, like the things that we accept and we don't.
Right.
And third, like, it's authenticity. It's like truly what you really want. So
Mm.
if it's like, if you're not being authentic, they're not going to be authentic. But if you're authentic and being true to who you are, you're going to start attracting those people that are all also authentic and that align with what you really want.
Right.
So I love the definition because like I was in the same boat. I felt like boundary was like, oh, I have to say no. Like, oh, how can I say this nicely but without saying no? But I was like, no, like a boundary is a way to like honor yourself and your wishes and truly what you want in your space. Like I
Yeah.
feel like, so at least like for me personally,
Yeah.
it felt like it was kind of like negative,
Yeah.
but it's no, it's like it's actually like a good and beautiful
You're
thing to
setting the
have.
standards for your life,
Yeah.
right? And if you don't set the standards for your life, then you leave yourself open for other people to tell you. And my therapist actually talked to me about the fact of why I had poor boundaries is because I think about like an abused child. I'm physically violated constantly, so I have no physical boundaries. I'm emotionally and mentally violated constantly, so there's no boundary. Like it was boundless in my household, right? Like everybody's spilling and projecting their emotions and their toxicity over everyone, and so everyone's experience is everyone's experience. Like one person's mad, the entire thing is like poisoned. Like it's just like it was boundless, right? And so I actually didn't know what boundaries were because I am used to tolerating a lot of shit. And so when then somebody comes into relationship with me and they start giving me a lot of shit, I'm like, this is fine. This is what I'm used to, right?
That's your
And
baseline because
right,
that was your home before,
yeah,
your
and
old home.
my old home, yeah. We're literally in a new home now. So symbolic, but the biggest part of the boundary I think was I remember she said, "You never turn against the self. You never turn against yourself. You're always on your own side." And what I learned through that process was understanding like how sacred, like me, Diana, how sacred I am, how sacred the things in my life are, like my medicine community, right? That I built, my business that I've built, which is my baby, like my work in the world, my purpose. These things are so sacred and they are worth protecting. I am sacred and I am worth protecting. You are sacred and you are worth protecting. And I think a lot of times if you've never had that kind of love and encouragement in your life where somebody's going to be like, you're worth protecting, because subconsciously I'm like, well, I'm not worth protecting because I was never protected, so
Right.
do what you will,
Well, when we take it one step further, right? Like your body is worth protecting, like your mind, like
Yes,
any kind of words. Because like we have the ability to speak life or destroy people through our words, right? So
absolutely.
like the people around us, like having those boundaries, only having like people that are like good and uplifting, right? That are like
Yeah,
sacred, like to your sacred mind, your sacred physical body,
yeah.
like your soul and your
Sacred
spirit.
Heart,
Like
yeah,
that is sacred too. And that is
absolutely.
worth protecting and worth guarding and only worth sharing with people that truly deserve that you want
Yeah,
to have that beautiful exchange with.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's really where, moving forward, as with
right,
all that we've learned and all that I've learned, is like really understanding, like, I just have so much so much beautiful sacred things in my life, and I also have a lot more to lose now because I've built so much of
right,
my life,
yeah,
right? And like, I can't allow just anyone to come in and wreak havoc in my life like that ever again. And the boundary for me was like a testament to how much I grew to love myself.
right,
Like, it was like I like finally came to that realization of like, whoa, wait, like I missed me. I missed me. Like, I had self-abandoned so many times that like I got disconnected from who I was myself, and there was almost like this reunion of me and me, where I was like, wait a minute, like, I miss me, I need me, and I need to protect me, and like this has to stop, like this is the end.
right.
And so I think like the last couple months, has just been like a rebuilding of a relationship with me and me.
You needed to be your own savior.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, like, as a child, I was looking for someone else to come and protect me and save me. But now
yeah,
as an adult, like, that's strong, empowered, has tools, like I step in and I'm that person for her, you know, and for me. Um, yeah.
and like now you can keep like all aspects of your life sacred, right? Like your mind, your body, like your ears, like really all of the input that
Yeah.
is coming into you, just
Yeah.
keep it sacred. And it's worth sharing because like you have so much love to give, like so much compassion. Like you walk into a room and it's just like like somebody like turn like a light on. So that's worth like protecting, so that way you can continue to do that, and you will find like your match too. That is also gonna be like radiating light, and then at that point it's gonna be like, okay, light and light here, and then they come together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. When we think about, well, thinking about that light, right? It's like, because one of my friends asked me, like, he was so manipulative. Like, do you still think that, like, he's a good person? And I'm like, it's not that he's a bad person. But when you understand that, like, when you come into, connection with someone who is light, and you are so much light too, which is why, light sees light, and somebody is in starvation of light, they have been deprived of light their whole life. And so when they see you as a source of light, it's almost like this immediate, like, I need that. I
Yeah.
need that. I not only do I need it for my
For
survival.
survival.
Right. And so it wasn't like he meant to suck the life out of me and, destroy everything that was sacred in my life. It was like he was such a dark black abyss of a person that everything that like came into his like realm just got sucked into that, and he needed it for survival. And so he
Right.
didn't care what it was doing to me. He didn't care that it was destroying me mentally, emotionally,
You
spiritually.
probably didn't even see it.
He could not see it because he's
Yeah.
he's in his own world of like, I need what I need to survive,
To make it through the day.
and I'm not, and whatever it was doing to me was like a passing thought, and even like a byproduct, and was completely not even considered. And so, that's the thing with narcissistic people, or you have to understand, like, you have to protect your house. You have to protect yourself. You have to have strong boundaries. You have to be aware of red flags, because it is almost not personal.
And what
Mm.
does a narcissist love?
People with no boundaries, empathic people.
Literally, they just go vroom like that. And narcissists love somebody that has a lot of empathy.
Yes,
Because they are
yes.
just gonna go ahead and feast on
They
all of that
feed off
empathy
that.
until they like
Yeah.
dry you out.
Yeah,
And they're just like, oh
absolutely.
my gosh, what happened to me? It's been a year, and I'm like, you know, I don't have energy. But
Yeah.
that's literally what happened. Just like constantly depleting
Yeah.
of that like light that you have to shine.
I see pictures of myself or videos of myself during that time, and like I was telling you earlier, like I almost like want to cry for that person, because I can see like how much she was suffering and how much she was like still holding it together, because that's what I
Right.
do. Like, as survivors, that's what we do, right? We're just taught we got to hold it together. We have to like be strong and all these things, and it's like I realize, like, coming into connection with people like you, Gabe, that really allow me to lean on you and feel supported, has been really, really healing for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got you in this together. No, but I also like and keeping it together, right? Holding it together. I can relate to that because once again, like as children that have not have like the proper things, what do
Yeah.
you usually do? You just stand there, you don't say a word, and you
Mhm.
just pretend like anything is happening, right? So
Yeah.
like with me, like I can relate at so many levels when like bad things will happen. Like I wouldn't say anything. I will just try to like my best to mimic what like happiness was like and project that. So they didn't want anybody to know. I never told anyone, what was happening.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you are kind of mirroring that still, or you feel like you've worked through that?
Yeah, no, I think I've worked a lot through that. Like for me, it's just being vulnerable, right? So whenever I am going through a hard time, or whenever something is not right, actually like sharing that with people. Like I don't have to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Like I because I'm not. No one is.
Yeah.
But just being able to like have like a heart that is like vulnerable and open, and I think it's also because like as kids that we're starving for love, right?
Yeah.
We strive to be perfect because what? If we're perfect, people are gonna like us more.
People will
Like
love
I was
us,
the
like us,
model
accept
child.
us, validate
Yeah, and
me.
validate us, but it's coming from like the opposite side, right?
Yeah.
Which is like the opposite of like perfectionism.
Yeah. I've actually, talking about vulnerability, I actually just came into like this realization the other day while I was, doing my morning practice, praying, doing my meditations, that there was like a part of me that was like the vulnerability, like receiving is vulnerable. And you guys
Yeah,
know this. I've talked a lot about like receiving is vulnerable. And in our feminine, we are, wired to receive, right? Even in our physical bodies, we are programmed to receive. And there was a part of my almost like receptor satellite in my receiving that was like broken. Like maybe it was like all like haywire, like it's like oh, because
where missed.
yeah, and
Yeah,
because I was vulnerable in that relationship, and my vulnerabilities were weaponized against me, right? So a lot of
yeah,
times, like things that we would share vulnerably, like he would use them to hurt me, like
right.
and it was such a wound of like things that had happened to me in my childhood with my family, and so many traumatic experiences in my life. And so I remember I was doing this meditation, and I had opened up my arms like this, and I had felt like this like pain like in my chest, and it was a receptivity meditation to like open myself to receiving. And I had felt into this pain, and I just started to like hysterically cry, because I realized that I had closed myself off to receiving because I had been so hurt and so wounded that almost I had closed myself off from like God, from source, from receiving love in this divine way. And it was as I was like crying and kind of purging through that and like releasing that pain and that anguish, I could feel God's presence there. And it was almost like, again, like another form of reunion where I was like, I miss God. I miss this connection to source that I'm so used to having, to being so close with. I had closed myself off to that because of this fear of being vulnerable, right?
Right.
And it was so profound, and it was so interesting that like then later that day, like I had like a $6,000 day, you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
money started to pour in into my life again, and I was like, oh right, because all the abundance that comes from God, from source, it is dependent upon our receptivity of that, our emotional connection to ourselves,
Right.
our ability to tap into that flow of abundance. And yeah, it was powerful realizing like although you can be wounded, although you can be hurt, do not let somebody take your openness from you. And that I think was one of the biggest things where I was sad that I thought I had lost, was like I had lost so much of myself. I had lost so much of my stability, my safety, but I had lost my ability to connect like with God, with source, and like to refine that, which I don't think I'll ever lose and not refine, because God is always calling us home, right? And the universe is always there to embrace us when we decide
It's
to,
like tapping in.
right, to
Yeah.
reopen yourself to be back in that loving space. And yeah, it was, I think a lot of times what we see in the world is a lot of people that have been so hurt and so wounded that they have just closed themselves off permanently. And I'm blessed to understand what it feels like to have access to my heart and what it feels like to not have access to my heart. Because
Right.
I think a lot of people live on a normalized basis, not having access to their heart. So even speaking about that, some people don't even realize what that means or how that feels or what that
Right.
experience is like. And I think that is actually like the cause of a lot of the things that are maybe, you know, uh destructive in the world, is people that are disconnected from their heart, people that are so disconnected from their heart, they're only focused on maybe their bodies, their looks, their material possessions, or acquiring more money or whatever. It's because they think there's this void, right? Because
Right.
they've been disconnected from their heart for so long that they're doing is trying to fill that void with all of these external things, not realizing the only way to fill that up is from within,
Opening the heart back up. Yeah.
opening your heart back up. And I
Yeah.
think when you, a lot of times when we go through traumatic things, it's very hard to do that, so people maybe
Like for
still.
me personally, like I feel like my heart has been closed for such a long time until like after I got out of that crazy relationship through Selena. Like she through a friend of mine, she started loving on me and I didn't understand. I was like, wait, what? Like you like that was the first time in my life in a long time that I have felt like loved and cared. And then after that, like thing once again, like my heart started to open. So I started to see love in other places. I started to love
Mm-hmm.
people a little deeper. I started to love myself more. And
Mm-hmm.
like all my relationships got deeper. I got more authentic. People are like, "Oh, you've changed," and I'm like, "I feel things now." I'm not like a little robot, and I'm
Yeah.
still working on it.
Yeah.
With like being vulnerable and like the crying thing that you totally helped me.
Yeah.
But I hadn't cried in like 11 or 12 years or so until like
Wow.
recently. But it's just like kind of like layers, right? Like it's just like
Yeah.
layers that we're always like peeling. That's why like we're always working on ourselves. And I love what you said, like until you heal that, like I feel like the universe keeps bringing people or God into your life
Mm.
that will like force you to go ahead and face whatever it is that you didn't want to face and actually like heal it, work on it, like open that wound. It's a little messy, but you clean it up.
Yeah.
That's why you have like people that love you, that support you, that believe in you. They help you get in there, get that out of the way, then boom, heal. We're at the next level.
Yes,
You
yes.
know?
Life is a video game, and we have to slay the dragon to get to the next level.
Yeah.
And sometimes that dragon is a narcissistic asshole.
That looks really pretty on the
That looks really
outside.
good on the outside. Yes.
But yeah, yeah,
And not to say this, and I just love that I've been able to help you cry again. Like
yes,
that is like, ah,
like that was unreal. Like, and we had this conversation, and I told you I was like, I mean, I used to cry like if I watch like a movie or if I read a card, but it had to be like on a circumstantial or with someone. But by myself, like I don't
yeah.
have time for crying. Like I have things to do. Like even though I'm so empathetic and I wasn't so into with so many other emotions,
Hmm.
but I was just sadness,
Yeah.
just sitting on that feeling and experiencing that. Because even when friends told me I was crying, and I was like, I would be like supportive, but I was like, but why?
You're like,
But
that's
like now I'm
weird.
like, oh, like that's like so the little that I have experienced, but it's been so healing.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like you let that go.
I love that. I love that. Can you please share more moments about what did you let go of the last time you cried?
That I cry. Oh my gosh, I want to get like vulnerable again.
Yes, that's right.
Honestly, like it was after like the dreams that I started to having. It was about like injustices. Like the last time that I cried, like specifically, I told you right. I was I want to cry again. Like I was bullied a lot, and like and a lot of things happened, like in plain sight from everyone to see,
Mm.
like not only words, but like mask and pushed and like spit on, like all kinds of things, and like nobody said anything, right? And there were lots of people watching it happen. So like I cried after I had this dream that brought all of that up. I think I was ready to heal it. I cried for like the injustice that happened to that little kid,
Yeah.
all of the things that happened to him, and like nobody said a word.
Mm.
And like now I understand why I'm such a fighter. If I see injustice, I'm like, not on my watch.
Yeah.
But I was like, that is also like a response to kind of like what happened to me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I got present to all of that, like it literally came like all at once. There's like one scene I was in like in my high school, and like literally the principal, he was like having a horrible day, and he screamed at me and said like, oh, the reason why you are like that, meaning that I was gay, is because you don't have a father and you're such like, and it insulted me in front of everyone, and everyone was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, I moved on.
Wow.
And then after that, it also gives other kids at the time like the ammo to go ahead and come after you with all
Oh
of
my
that. Oh, this is why
gosh.
you're terrible in this. So they come and they push you, whatever.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have to like recreate all of that. But yeah, when I got present to all of that hurt that I don't think I had processed, like it made me cry. And I
Yeah.
cried, like I told you, it was like a good 5 minutes. For me, that was like I was like,
I
oh
can cry
my
for
gosh,
2 hours straight. He's like, I
I
cry
was
for
like, I
five
cried for
minutes.
5 minutes,
Oh,
and it
babe,
was,
that's
but
great
also like it
though.
was like so healing. And
Yeah.
then I was able to like tap into emotions that I haven't experienced in a long
Oh,
time.
I mean, obviously, I hate that that happened to you, but I love that who you are as the grown adult that is empowered, that is strong, is able to meet that wounded inner child part of you and say that was horrible.
Yeah, yeah,
That was bad. I'm so sorry you went through that. And hold that. I think a lot of I actually just talked with a friend through this process earlier. It's like a lot of our healing is about us holding ourselves,
right,
right? Because that inner child part of you was still living in that trauma
100%.
that whole time, still living. That inner child part of me, the
Finding men
cave
that were
girl.
just as
Yeah,
abusive as those kids, and
right.
like being in a relationship with them.
Right.
Yeah,
The cave girl was still stuck in the closet running away from my abusive mom and
yeah,
sister, and your little boy was still there getting yelled at and spit on and having all these injustices done to him. And it's like, it's not until we come and like reunite ourselves with this like wounded part of ourselves and like really hold it close to us and be like, I love you. Like, I got you. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. And that was horrible. And it was so bad. And you did not deserve it. And allow yourself to process and have that emotion, like the consoling that we need
right,
as a
yeah,
child to really be that. I was talking to my friend earlier because she was like really being so mean to herself. I was like, first of all, if your daughter was crying in front of your face right now, is this what you would be saying to her? She's like, no. And I'm like, so don't say it to yourself. If you saw a child in front of your face right now having this emotion, you would have picked them up and you would give them warmth and love
And
and
soothe them,
nurturing.
yeah.
And that is what I feel like a lot of adults forgotten. Like, you still need that. And if no one else is going to give it to you, give it to
It's yourself.
yourself. Give it
Yeah.
to yourself. And allow that inner child part of you to feel their feelings. Like you said, like, we're, as children, like, we don't know how to process our feelings. We don't know what we're feeling. We're like literally stunned. We don't have the tools,
No.
the strength to be like, wow, like, I'm scared and I'm hurt. Like, we don't have the ability to process. And so it's almost like we have to, and I learned a lot about this in my course around childhood trauma, is like you need the adult to metabolize your feelings for you. Like, so it's like you need the adult to be like, I know that was scary, I
And I
know
think
that
that's
was
why
hard.
sometimes like all of that trauma, right, that happened to us when we were young are like coming up now, resurfacing
Right.
because maybe we're like, not maybe because we're ready now to face
You're
that and to
capable
heal
now.
it. We
Yeah.
have the tools, we have like the mental capacity, the resources, the people, we are
Yeah.
in the environment to heal that,
Yeah.
and just to like move on and to be different, like a 2.0 version
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel lighter?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Good.
Like especially sitting with that pain, and like because I told you I just started like remembering things, I didn't even know those things happened. It was like memory after memory after memory, and I was like, okay, what do I do with this? And then after our call, I just sat down in my kitchen, which I try to do. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I also shared that. So I was sad and I legitimately wanted to cry, and I sat down on my kitchen and I was like, okay, cry, but I couldn't. And I was like, I don't have time for this. Moved on with my day. But after I had a conversation, I was really feeling that. I sat down on the floor, not even on the couch, just on the floor, like on a corner, and I just cried for a whole 5 minutes and like let all of that go.
The purging that needs to happen, man. I think a lot of times, like, that um that term, we don't have time for this, right? A lot of when my clients say the things like that, I'm like, who told you that? Like, what, like, at what point in your life did someone tell you they didn't have time for your emotions? It was usually a parent, right? Usually somebody, it's like, oh, you little crybaby, we don't have time for this right now. Like, let's go. And I remember even too, like, if I was crying from, having been hit or something having happened to me, it's like, well, we're leaving now. So get your face together because we're going outside now. We don't have time for this, right?
Right.
And so we then adopt that dialogue within, and we then do it to ourselves. Like, we don't have time for this. Like, no, like, I got time for me now. I got a little time for that.
Same, same.
I got time for that. And that's only when you make time to be with that part of yourself will you ever really heal it. And then guess what? When you're healed, from coming from a healed place, the things you attract into your life, other healed people, beautiful, healthy relationships,
Yeah.
abundant opportunities, amazing life experiences, more uplifting love, joy, and bliss, and
And you
just
start connecting with people that are just at a different level,
right,
like, and
right,
whenever you see like whatever it is that you went through in the past, you're like, been there, done that, graduated from it. No, like we're only in this
yeah,
level over here.
yeah.
So there's a saying, it's like you feel it and then you heal it, right?
Right.
And
In
then
order to heal it, you have to
you
feel
have
it.
to feel it, yeah. And then the other one that I actually posted on my TikTok, it said that when you numb one emotion, you numb all of your emotions. And
Yes.
that's what it kind of like started me. It prompted me. I was like, wait, like I don't cry. I'm definitely numbing something here, so I don't want
You're like
everything else
you're
to
like
be
fuck.
numb. I'm like, oh my god, we gotta work on this right now. But that's why like those things are beautiful, right? Once you have like the knowledge and the capacity to do something about it,
Yeah.
that's when we have to like. That's when I took action. That's when you took action.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like that's the word, like the calling. Like okay, here's the calling.
Yeah.
It's your time. Let's do this.
It's
It gets
time.
a little scary,
You know,
but it's doable.
and it's worth it because me and my therapist were just talking about this the other day, like how I have been like, how I've been recently is like, I'm excited to get out there and share myself with people. I feel safe to like go to events by myself because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make friends there or do this by
Right.
myself or join this thing by myself. And I just know that I'm gonna connect with people and make friends there. Where it's like, prior to this, I would feel so deeply insecure and unsafe to go do like just because I'm like, oh, are they gonna like me? Are they gonna love me? Are they gonna reject me? And like there was like this like social anxiety that I was having, and it's crazy because a lot of people would never think that I had that. But it's like only in situations I can control am I very confident. But if I go into a situation where I can't control, I'm gonna have like this like deep insecurities and feelings of
Right.
unsafety. And since this entire traumatic relationship and healing of all of that, my ayahuasca ceremony, I've come into this place where I'm like, yeah, I can go anywhere and do anything and share, and I feel safe to share myself with people, not fearing rejection, not craving acceptance, but just allowing myself to authentically be, shine,
And it
and
shows because when you show up in a room like Diana has
oh,
arrived in the most beautiful and powerful way, you
I
know?
love you. Thank
Yeah,
you,
of
honey.
course. I love you too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but it is noticeable. Like not only like it visible to everyone. Yeah, and I think that's what happens whenever we start like healing ourselves. You know, we show
right.
up differently because we are different.
Yeah. Well, I think now that I've created like inner safety,
Right.
like the external safety is not really, it's not depend like I'm not dependent on it to
Right.
for it to determine how I show up. Like I can show up to unsafe environments, but I'm safe within myself, so it's like I'm still good. And I think that my therapist was like, oh my god, Diana, we've been working on this for so long. And I'm like, I know, and we're here now, and I love it here, and it's great.
You
So
have arrived.
if that is, the piece of gold and gem that I got from the deep excavation of my soul these past couple months, and I am grateful. And it's all good. And it's all good. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, Gabriel, thanks for joining me for this very
Thank you
intimate
for having me
and
with
very
you.
vulnerable episode, and a first episode back in a long time. And I
Yeah.
think we're going to be doing these a lot more frequently now that
Yes.
I've got another podcast buddy here. And Gabriel, tell people where they can find you on. I know you're a big
Sure.
TikToker.
Yeah. So on TikTok, or on Instagram. So my handle on Instagram is Gabriel underscore DLP7. And on TikTok is Gabriel DLP and then 7777. So
Ooh,
four
angel
times number seven.
numbers. We
Yes.
love to see it.
Of
Um,
course.
you guys know me, Diana Min. I'm at the Urban Indigo on both platforms. And yeah, leave us some comments. Let us know
Yeah.
if you relate to a lot of the things that we talked about. If you're going through something similar, if you need support, just know that whatever it is you're going through, it is a gift for you. It is going to transform you. And if you're on the other side of that transformation, then kudos to you, because I know we know
Bravo.
how hard
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. You need to work really
And
hard.
if you want to leave any comments of other topics you guys want us to talk about, because me and Gabriel really on our personal time talk about
Everything.
everything. So
Yes.
to really bring this to a bigger platform, to really share these conversations with you guys so that we can all heal and all rise together and really support each other. Because listen, this human experience, man, it's fucking hard, and we should be doing it together.
With love, with support, with people that believe in us. So
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, honey, you're
We'll
you're
do it.
here.
All
You're
right,
here
we're
for
doing
good.
this.
We're keeping him. We're gonna
All
keep
right.
him. We love you
Okay.
guys,
All
and
right. Bye.
we'll
Thank
see you on
you.
the next episode of the Urban Indigo podcast.
Will do.
Bye.
Bye.